Tonight, Keir Starmer praises Italy's right-wing Prime Minister for cracking down on migration. The Labour leader says that Giorgia Meloni has made remarkable progress taking on smuggling gangs. Meanwhile, here at the Liberal Democrat conference in Brighton, Sir Ed Davey addresses divisions over the issue of assisted dying, warning his party not to rush to a decision. Plus, I'll be joined live by the Deputy Leader, Daisy Cooper, after she tells conference how doctors warned her she only had 4 days to live. Plus, more pressure on the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, as a group of economists warn that cutting public investment will damage the foundations of the economy. Plus, we'll be live in the US as the FBI investigates a second assassination attempt on Donald Trump, as more details about the alleged gunman are expected to emerge tonight. And after we found out what tipple Italian PM Meloni needs to get through the working day, we're going to have a look at political riders. All that and more with Jardine and Polly Mackenzie, who will be with us for the next hour. It's Monday. I'm Sophy Ridge, live from the Liberal Democrats conference in Brighton, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. Well, there is lots to talk about here at the Lib Dem conference tonight, but before that, I just wanted to talk about migration. Now, it's one of the toughest political problems to crack. The thousands of people illegally crossing the Channel in small boats, prepared to risk death in order to get here. Now, Keir Starmer has promised to smash the criminal gangs and bring those numbers down, but of course, well, that's easier said than done, isn't it? And today, he's been in Italy meeting Giorgia Meloni to try and learn from their approach. Now, I just want to pause and take a moment. Keir Starmer is meeting Giorgia Meloni to try and learn from her approach on migration. Now, Giorgia Meloni is on the right. Some would describe her politics as far right. To put it in British context, Nigel Farage has praised her immigration strategy. She's done deals on migration with Libya, Albania, Tunisia, which have all been criticised for different human rights reasons. So, yeah, her approach is controversial. But I guess her defenders would say it's working. Numbers are down 62% in the last year. And with another 8 migrants dying in the Channel today, it looks like Keir Starmer might be prepared to listen. Well, here's Sky's Darren McCaffrey now, who sent this report from Rome.
And that's the overall number at the top.
Here to learn lessons from the Italians.
Is this the drone picture?
Yeah.
So you've got that coming in the whole time?
Yeah.
The Prime Minister at a migration command centre in Rome, alongside his own newly appointed UK border commander, trying to understand how Italy has achieved a 60% drop in migrant boat crossings in the Mediterranean over the last year. And even amidst the pomp of a red carpet welcome, it's important to remember that this is an issue that has brought 2 very different prime ministers, despite the warm optics, from opposite ends of the political spectrum together.
Grazie, Keir, a te la parola.
And it was a relationship Keir Starmer felt the need to defend.
I'm very interested in the work that the Prime Minister here in Italy has been doing, and that's what this is about. It's about the politics of pragmatism. The British are very good at pragmatism. It's what we're known for over the years, which is seeing a problem and actually rolling up our sleeves and thinking through which is the most effective way to deal with it.
Italy's success in reducing numbers has in part been due to bilateral deals with Libya and Tunisia. But they're also going further, signing a controversial pact with Albania to build asylum centres and process migrant claims before they reach Italy. And while it has similarities with the Rwanda scheme, it does significantly differ, with asylum seekers allowed to move to Italy if their claim is successful.
Some at home, even inside Labour, have voiced their concerns about Keir Starmer learning lessons from Meloni's right-wing government. But the Prime Minister's argument is that if you want to stop illegal migration, you need European cooperation, like he's trying to achieve here in Rome today.
Elsewhere, that cooperation is in short supply, with Germany today imposing extra border restrictions with its EU neighbours to stem migrant numbers. And for Keir Starmer, this has to be about more than just international cooperation. With the worst year on record for deaths in the English Channel, it's one mission that has become increasingly urgent. Darren McCaffrey, Sky News, Rome.
Right, let's bring in our duo for this evening, shall we? The Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Jardine, and the former Director of Policy for Clegg when he was Deputy Prime Minister, Polly Mackenzie, who now works as Chief Social Purpose Officer at the University of Arts London. Great to have you both here. Kristen, I guess one of those things about having so many MPs is you've now got a bit of a responsibility when it comes to legislation and policy, because you can have an impact. What do you make of Keir Starmer's trip to Italy and saying that Italy's made remarkable progress, as he puts it?
Well, I think we all recognise that the policy so far on the small boats hasn't worked. They're still coming, people are still dying, and we need to do something about it. And if he can come up with a policy which we can support, then great. But I'm a great believer that we still need more safe legal routes, that we need to tackle all the problems at source. We need to reinstate our international development budget, and we need to smash the gangs. Now, if there are lessons to be learned from any country in the world, I'm happy to at least consider them. But I think we have to scrutinise it. We have to make sure that it's not just another gimmick.
So even Italy, you know, she's a controversial figure amongst some, particularly on the left.
Well, she is, but what we have to make sure more than anything else for me is that this is not just another gimmick like Rwanda dressed up as, oh, look, the Italians have been successful. We have to make sure that we have safe legal routes, that we restore international aid, that we smash the gangs, because none of us want to see the boats continue. None of us want to see people dying like today. But finding the right solution is the most important thing.
Polly, what's your take on this? Because it's really hard, isn't it? You know, if there was an easy solution, every country in the world would be doing it. Like we can kind of front up to that. But then there's obviously trade-offs when it comes to human rights abuses and other concerns.
I think the problem with this whole debate is it slightly ignores the scale of what's going on globally. The demand, or the need, actually, from people who are displaced by war, by famine, and increasingly by climate change is incredibly high and only rising. And, of course, seeing people breaking the law in desperation is deeply upsetting, especially when they're being exploited at often the cost of their lives, certainly risking their lives, by criminal gangs who are profiteering off that desperation is profoundly offensive. But there isn't a solution that comes exclusively through enforcement when you have these vast global disparities of wealth and of safety. And actually, it's of course right for the Prime Minister, I think, to reach out to other countries and Italy, Germany, all exploring different avenues. But the reality is, I think we need a new global approach. The vast majority of the burden of supporting refugees falls on the poorest countries in the world, because most people who are refugees end up in neighbouring countries who are just as poor. And actually, if we could come up with ways, yes, to have safe legal routes, as Christine describes, but also ways to use international development to minimise the number of people who are fleeing their homes in the first place. And that probably requires global leadership, major global conferences. We're thinking about this as something you can just pick off with a few gunships.
You can't do that,
but
yeah.
it's much too big for that. But can I just ask, because obviously there's a big question about safe legal routes, and there's a big question about helping countries at source, that people don't want to make the journey. But if we kind of get real, we're not going to be able to solve all the wars in the world. We're not going to be able to solve climate change. People are still going to want to come here, if we spend a bit more money.
We might be able to address climate change.
We can at least try.
Yeah.
And what we're doing at the moment...
This is a long-term goal, climate change.
Yes.
It's not going to sort out the number of people dying in the Channel next year, right? No. This is my point here. So do we also need to make some of the more controversial decisions alongside some of the other help that you're talking about?
Well, I think what we're doing at the moment is we're treating the consequences of a lot of problems, like Polly says. And what we need to start doing is actually treating the problems.
But we can't solve all the problems in the world.
We can't solve
That's
them
what
all
I mean.
overnight,
there will always
but
be
at the
people
moment,
who want a better life for their families, no
yes,
matter what we do.
There will, and that is, if you like, that's not a problem, people wanting better lives for their families. What we've got is people fleeing tyranny, people fleeing persecution, people fleeing climate change. We need to tackle those problems. That's why our international aid budget was so important, and the Tories cut it back.
Our international aid budget is not going to solve tyranny, is it?
No, it's not. But our foreign policy, our soft foreign policy, all of that, we need to be addressing the issues where they are, and not once immigrants get to France or are coming across the Channel, it's too late. The problem has to be treated at source. We need to be having people on the ground, talking to refugees, talking to people who are, a lot of them, entitled to asylum in this country, and speaking to them there on the ground, rather than waiting till they've taken some illegal route, paid some gang some extortionate amount of money to end up on an unsafe inflatable boat in the Channel and drown.
I mean, that's got to be, of course, the aim for absolutely everyone in this debate, indeed. Thank you both very much. It's an issue that's going to run and run, I'm sure. Well, of course, we are here at Lib Dem conference, so it's time to talk about why the Politics Hub was up sticks to Brighton for the day, not just because it's sunny here today, I promise. So I'm here in Brighton, where the Liberal Democrats are having their party conference. And honestly, I was going to say buzzing. Now, that's probably going a little bit far, but they are really excited to be here. And they're really excited to have a record-breaking 72 MPs elected at the last election. Well, now the Lib Dems are a serious political force, well, we all need to start treating them that way. It's a shift of thinking I'm not sure the Conservatives have completely caught up with. They're spending an awful lot of time talking about reform when it was the Lib Dems who took 59 seats off them at the last election. But more seats and more votes comes with its own challenges too. The Lib Dems won a broad coalition at the last election, from former Conservative voters to former Corbyn backers. And so now they've got challenges too and questions. Are they a party to the left or the right of Labour? How will they respond to the budget? And the big question that all parties face, who do the Lib Dems really want to be? Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, joins me now too. And Sam, we've all got to start treating the Lib Dems, I guess, differently. They're a real force in Parliament now.
That's right. And here we are in Brighton, and it's got the flavour of a victory rally. Look, the bars are overflowing, people incredibly cheerful. Ed Davey, who I saw earlier today, just ebullient about his victory and what it means. But we're here at this moment looking at them because, if I'm being honest, I didn't quite know what direction Ed Davey and his 72 fellow travellers, he won 72 MPs on election night on July the 4th, where it's all going to go. For this reason, Ed Davey took the Liberal Democrats to, quite a new place as a almost exclusively anti-Conservative force, and did so for several years, all the way up to the election, in order to get that great big haul of seats that he achieved on July the 4th. But the question now is, with the Conservatives gone, just how does he oppose to the Liberal Democrats, which I think a lot of people in politics would say are something of shapeshifters? Do they start to criticise from the left or the right the Labour government? Do they largely row in behind? Do they continue to keep trying to attack the Conservatives? All of those things, I think, are quite interesting at the moment.
And you spoke to Ed Davey today.
That's right. It's going to be hard for the Liberal Democrats to oppose government measures because of the 160-odd majority of the government. But they can make a difference, whether a big parliamentary moment. And my goodness, Sophie, one of them couldn't be bigger, and it's coming down the track really quickly. That's the subject of assisted dying. All sorts of Lib Dem MPs want the Liberal Democrat Party to own the subject of assisted dying and the change in the law. They think it's it's a pace with changes to equal marriage legislation, liberalising abortion legislation. They think they should be at the forefront. But there's a problem. One person doesn't agree, and he happens to be the leader. I sat down with him earlier today.
I think there should be a debate, absolutely. We've been very open for that. I think it needs to be a debate which gives people a chance to listen to all sides and take time and to consider, because it's such a critical issue, and it should be a free vote. I have to say, personally, I have some concerns. When it came to Parliament quite a long time ago, I voted against proceeding with assisted dying, and my concerns are both quite personal. I nursed my mother as a teenager when she was dying of bone cancer, and I saw someone who had a very painful disease, and by nursing and giving palliative care, she was able to enjoy life and be with us, which is what she wanted to be. Now, I accept every case may be different, but here's my other concern, which I want to listen to the debate about, is the pressure it could put on elderly people. Not pressure coming necessarily from the relatives, but from them inside, internally, which they may not express. And I think a situation where elderly people might think they're a burden and then proceed with this, that's a huge worry and I think we should focus on that.
You referred to your mother, a subject that you talk about movingly a number of times and have done a number of times. Esther Ranson, who is campaigning to change the law, said Ed Davey's mother chose to live. She still had a quality of life in spite of pain. It was her choice, and she would be free to make her choice under that new bill. What do you think of what she says?
Well, I have a huge respect for Esther Ranson. She's been a great campaigner, and she's campaigning on this. I think it's good that we have that debate. I know my mother better than most people, I should say. So I know what she thought and how she behaved. But I'm not convinced that the campaign yet has answered my question about the pressure it puts on the psychology of someone who's elderly, who's worried that they could be a burden.
Will there ever be an answer to that question? Are you always not going to be opposed to this change?
Well, I'm open to debate. I've said that. It will take a lot to shift me. But I think we need to debate this. But I do come to it as a sceptic for the reasons I've described.
What is it about your personal experience that leads you to this position?
Well, from my personal experience, I believe that palliative care can be very, very effective. And I think if we invest in our hospices, we invest in palliative care, I think a large part of the concerns that people have will go away.
You're telling MPs in Parliament, take your time?
I think so. I absolutely think so. I don't think we should rush this.
Because there are people who want to rush it. There are people who want to have a vote in the next few weeks. You'd say, don't do that.
No, I think we have to have a more considered debate.
Ed Davey there speaking to Sam Coates. Well, with me now is the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Daisy Cooper. Great to have you on the programme here in Brighton. We just heard Ed Davey talking very frankly about his own concerns around assisted dying. Now, of course, it's going to be a free vote when it does come to Parliament. What's your own position on it?
Well, it's really important to say that this is a conscience issue, and many members of Parliament, in fact, many members of the public, have got very strong views on this. There's also a number of people who just can't make up their minds yet. I spoke in a debate a few years ago, shortly after I was elected, where I said that if there was a vote tomorrow, I genuinely wouldn't know how I would vote. I think I'm now in a position where my instinct is to support dignity in dying, to support assisted dying. However, there is a very large but, which is that I would want to be persuaded that the safeguards were robust enough. And what I think is really essential is that we do have the debate, and at some point we do have a vote. But what I hope more than anything else is that the debate is incredibly respectful, because people come to this debate with a lot of instinct, a lot of experiences of their own. Many can be quite traumatic one way or the other. And so I hope that when we do get to a stage of having that debate, that it is a respectful debate, when we get there.
It's true. And everyone has such past, as you say, past experience that they bring, and it can influence them in lots of different directions. And I'm sure lots of our viewers will have their own very hard felt decisions on that as well.
Sure.
I just want to talk to you about the speech that you gave today, because I'll be honest, it totally took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting you to give such a personal speech. Some of our viewers might not have heard it. You spoke about your own experience with Crohn's.
So, yeah, I mean, I now know that I probably had Crohn's disease my entire life, but it wasn't diagnosed. And 12 years ago, I had quite a shocking experience where I got very ill very quickly. I lost a lot of weight, was rushed into hospital, and was told that without major surgery, I only had 4 days left to live. But they also said that if I recovered, then I may not ever be able to work full-time again. I may only be able to work 1 day a week and to do nothing too stressful. But it is really down to the amazing work of the specialist nurses, of the consultants, of the surgeons, of the medics in the NHS who have helped me through years of drug therapy, that I'm now in a really good position. And it just felt on a personal level like a really good time to share this. Because
why did you decide to talk about it?
Yeah, I think on a personal level, as you get a little bit older, you sort of have more confidence in talking about quite private and traumatic experiences. So it felt like the right time to do it on a personal level. But also, I feel so passionately about the need to fix our NHS and care. You know, our party put it front and centre during our general election campaign. We're calling on the government to make the budget a budget to save the NHS and care. And I think this is really important when we talk about the NHS and care services. We remember why we're talking about it. We're talking about it because having good health and care gives people freedom. It gives them the freedom to live their lives as they choose and to live their lives to the full. And there are many people around the country who won't be able to do that because of the state of these services.
I'll be honest, I didn't even think that Crohn's could be something that was life-threatening.
Yeah.
Right? I really just didn't realise that at all. And you know, in your speech, you talk about being just 7 stone, losing an awful lot of weight, your arms going black and blue. I mean, it sounds like you were really ill, very ill.
I was incredibly ill. And I mean, Crohn's is on a huge spectrum.
Yeah.
So there are some people who might have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, and they may just have a few flare-ups every few years, and it may not interfere with their life too much. There are other people who have it almost constantly, who have a lot of drug therapy, and sometimes it can impact them quite a lot. There are other people who have it so severely they have to have surgery every few years to remove parts of their inside. So there is a huge spectrum, but certainly I've spoken about this today. I've spoken about it privately in sort of fundraisers for Crohn's and colitis, a fantastic charity that helped me. But really, this is the first time I've spoken about it publicly. But I do hope that for all those people who are, you know, struggling to access the care they need, I want people to know that actually there are those of us in Parliament who are fighting from our own experience to make sure people can get the care they need when they need it.
I can tell, and I mean this in the nicest way, you are someone who is not that used to talking about things that are private to you, your own personal experience. You're talking a lot about others, about the NHS.
Yeah.
But when someone said to you that you might die, I mean, I can't imagine what that must have been like. I mean,
I was incredibly weak.
frightening.
I was incredibly weak at that point. My heart rate had plummeted. My eyesight was failing. I had huge amounts of different types of drug therapies over those few weeks since I'd been admitted to hospital, and I was incredibly physically weak. And there were a couple of other women on the ward at the time who I'd obviously never met before, but they were there and they'd been admitted for Crohn's disease as well, and they were joking that I looked drunk all the time because every time I tried to stand up and walk to the bathroom, I couldn't walk in a straight line and kept falling onto the bed.
I can't imagine this, seeing you now. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, it's thanks to the amazing staff in the NHS that I'm here today, and that I am living my life to the full and being able to contribute to public life in this country.
You talk about the NHS, and obviously there is a lot of concern around the funding of the NHS, pressure on public services, but also, of course, lots of debt. And Rachel Reeves has been very clear that she wants to stick to the fiscal rules at the budget. You've spoken about wanting to be the party of the NHS. Yeah. But if you want to do that and give the public services the funding that they need, do you think it's now time for Labour to, I guess, change the fiscal rules, to rip up the fiscal rules, so there is more opportunity for investment in things like the NHS?
Well, we're really clear about what we want to see. We want to see a big increase in day-to-day spending. We don't think that personal taxes need to go up. We don't think we should be taxing people in a cost of living crisis, but we do think that there are the big banks, for example, that have had a huge tax cut from the Conservatives. That could be reversed to pay for an investment in day-to-day spending in the NHS. But we have got to also borrow money to invest in rebuilding our hospitals and our GP surgeries, which are crumbling.
Are you worried about, I guess, a return to austerity?
Well, look, we don't know what's going to be in the budget, and we've got a few weeks to make the case. And I really hope that Labour politicians and the Labour government are listening to our ideas. We want to be a constructive opposition, and we want the government to take up the ideas that we're giving them. And we've been very clear about what we're suggesting. Increase the day-to-day spending by reversing tax cuts on the big banks, and borrow to invest in rebuilding our hospitals and our GP surgeries.
The Lib Dems were, of course, part of the 2010 coalition that did impose austerity. Are you effectively telling Labour, don't learn from our mistakes, don't do what we did?
Well, look, during coalition years, it's clear that the Liberal Democrats were fighting the Conservatives day in, day out, and we did manage to protect the health and education budgets in real terms, in terms of the day-to-day spending in that era. And as soon as we hit 2015, you can see what happened when the Conservatives were left to their own devices. They slashed public health budgets by 25%. Cancer targets have been missed every single year since 2015. A&E waiting times have got worse, and so you can see what's happened. So I think the blame for the state of the NHS is is squarely at the feet of the Conservatives. What we want Labour to do is we do want them to increase day-to-day spending, and we want them to borrow to invest in rebuilding our hospitals and GP surgeries.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Daisy Cooper there, Deputy Leader of the Lib Dems. Well, the issue of assisted dying, the events at Lib Dem conference, and of course all of the big political news is sure to feature in tomorrow's papers. We'll have our extended press preview from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining Anna Botting will be the political editors of The Sun and The Guardian, that is Harry Cole and Pippa Creer. You're watching the Politics Hub. Coming up, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni reportedly cracks open the Aperol Spritz and sparks up a skinny fag to keep her mojo up in foreign summits. Paul Harb is on tour at the Lib Dem conference, so we are looking at political riders later in the programme. A second assassination attempt against Donald Trump, body cam footage showing the arrest of a suspected gunman. Is political violence becoming normalised in this, the most dramatic presidential election in history? But next, the Chancellor faces warnings from leading economists that cutting public investment in the UK would damage the economy and calls to bend her fiscal rules. Plus, is this the post-stunt phase of Ed Davey's leadership? We'll have lots more from tonight's panel. That is Jardine and Polly Mackenzie after the break.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. You know, it takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, like, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel like just don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello. No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it. This is brilliant.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky's West of England correspondent.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. We help you to understand the world with us.
I'm Adam Parsons, I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm one of Sky's Midlands correspondents. The reason I do this job is because you never know where it's going to lead.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Right, let's bring back in our duo for tonight, shall we? Jardine and Polly Mackenzie. Well, you're both, I guess, kind of veterans of Lib Dem conference.
Sadly.
This one feels a bit different though, right?
Yeah. It's completely different because, certainly than the one since 2015 when the Lib Dems went down to, I can't remember, I've blocked it out how many MPs it was. 8. So to have 72 MPs, which is more than ever before in the history of the party, means I've seen people in the bar saying things like, is that an MP? Is that an MP? Is that Josh? So it's really is a very different vibe.
Yeah. It's very different, and also a huge percentage of the membership have no memory of conferences before 2015. they weren't in Glasgow or Newcastle or Birmingham when we were in government. So this is completely new and a completely different sort of vibe to anything they've experienced before. And that's brilliant to watch because they're enjoying it so much. And there's just such a positive atmosphere.
Now, of course, with, I guess, more power brings more responsibility, and also you've got a lot more voters now. And it's, you know, it's kind of a point that I was trying to make earlier in the programme, like the kind of broader coalition. You're taking votes off the Conservatives, you're taking votes off, I guess, from the left as well. Polly, where do you think the Lib Dem should be positioning themselves now?
I was speaking on a panel about this earlier, in fact, and I think there is a lot of people in the Liberal Democrats who would like the party to just sort of surge forward as generically competent public administrators. And that's not really...
We'll put that on a leaflet, I'll be honest.
It's not really a set of political choices. There are people who would like to attack Labour essentially from the left, but the challenge of that is that it's very contested political territory. You've got Jeremy Corbyn's new force, you've got the Greens. Of course, there will be people here who say, I dispute the left-right axis. It's all about liberals versus authoritarians. But the left-right axis does exist.
It does,
The challenge is that the political space at the moment is in the centre and to the centre-right. And
Got thumbs up there,
the uncomfortable bit is when you say the centre-right, because the Conservative Party, in its current leadership election, appears to be, you know, moving towards trying to get back those reform votes, which means they are opening up space. If the Liberal Democrats attack from the left, they will leave a space open for the Conservatives to come back to the centre. And so I mean, a sort of strategic advice would be to occupy the open ground. That's uncomfortable for a party, so many of whom identify really as progressives. I think the only territory to focus on is Europe, because that is popular with the activists and a question of liberalism, growth, free movement, saving the NHS.
Very, very interesting. We're out of time on this chat. I could have spoken... No, but it's really interesting. Yeah, we'll take it. It is very interesting, isn't it? The kind of sort of strategically, where do you position yourselves? Thanks both very much. We're now on to the economy and a grim set of indicators, including flatlining growth. The Chancellor's facing warnings from leading economists that cutting public spending could further choke off growth, and instead they're urging Rachel Reeves to revisit her fiscal rules to allow for a boost in spending ahead of next month's budget. Well, one of the 8 signatories of the letter to the FT, Mariana Mazzucato, a professor at the University College London, spoke to Sky News earlier.
The fact that this country, the United Kingdom, has had much lower than average, so lower than the G7, lower than the OECD, both public and private sector investment, should really be, a big warning call. And by just constantly talking about holes and worrying about those holes and lowering, and this is the problem, public investment in order to deal with that hole will actually just make that hole bigger.
Well, last week I spoke to the former Bank of England chief economist Andy Haldane on this programme, and he told me the Chancellor's warnings of a black hole were probably unhelpful.
It'd be much better to say nothing until you provide solutions to filling the black hole as well as revealing it. As it was, that's generated fear and foreboding, an uncertainty among consumers, among businesses, among investors in UK PLC, which is unfortunate because just after the election there was a sense of refresh, a sense of renewal, a confidence about the UK, both domestically and internationally.
Well, let's chat again to Christine and Polly, shall we? And Christine, look, it's going to be a big challenge, of course, for the new government, but also, I guess, for parties like the Lib Dem, the budget. How are you going to respond to it? What are you going to be calling for? I mean, do you think that there, I guess, is room for Rachel Reeves to junk the fiscal rules?
I think she's going to have to bend in some areas. The winter fuel allowance, for example, is hugely unpopular in the country. I think she's going to have to think about it again. And I think there are areas where she's going to have to bend. We can't respond yet because we don't know exactly what's going to be in the budget, but there are different ways of raising the money that they say is short, that we put forward in the manifesto. And as Daisy Cooper was saying earlier, we'll be putting those to the government and hope that they will listen and hope that perhaps we can avoid some of the more damaging cuts and policies that they seem sort of thorough to at the moment.
I mean, you were there through the coalition years, right? And there was obviously a big pressure on restrained spending, on fixing the roof when the sun is shining, all that kind of stuff. What's your view on austerity now?
Well, it's a combination of economics and narrative. And I think Andy Haldane's comments are interesting because as an economist, he's also talking about narrative. From the economics, I think the big mistake, which is now widely acknowledged, is that the coalition made was cutting back capital investment, which is so critical to getting growth and to actually improving productivity and performance in our public services. The narrative point, though, is really fascinating because confidence actually matters. And you can go too far on this. If you ignore the fundamentals and only talk about confidence, you end up with Boris Johnson and you're sort of separated from economic reality. But market confidence and consumer confidence and investor confidence can all actually make a difference to the fundamentals, which is what Andy Haldane is setting out. And that is the problem, is that Labour is seemingly trying to balance a desire to under-promise, to give themselves time so that they can over-deliver later, but they might actually be harming their ability to mobilise the voters, get people contributing to the economy, and crucially bring in foreign direct investment to put into our infrastructure and actually enable growth to come back.
Because it does feel, I guess you can understand the politics, right? That this is all about pinning the brain on the last guys, right?
Yeah. But, as Polly says, I actually think they're going too far with this sort of downbeat, oh, the economy's terrible and everything. It's beginning to feel publicly as if they're talking the country down and the public doesn't like it, and it's damaging, as you say, it's undermining confidence. Why would MD have confidence in the country the way that Keir Starmer's talking about it at the moment? They need to change direction. And I think they need to realise, if you like, the mistake that we made in the coalition and not overcut. And they need capital investment to get the economy going again.
OK, thanks both very much. Coming up next on the Politics Hub. A second assassination attempt against Donald Trump. What will be the impact on the presidential election? And, well, mine's a massive bag of Haribo. The Poll Hub editor Daryl mainlines Greg sausage rolls, while Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni relies on an Aperol Spritz to keep her going through political summits. As Westminster packs its bags and heads off into conference season, we are looking at political riders. Hello, welcome back. I have some breaking news to bring you now because junior doctors have voted to accept a government pay deal. They've accepted the pay offer of 66%, by 66%, I should say, after the most prolonged industrial dispute in the NHS's history. In the last few minutes, the House Secretary, Wes Streeting, has been responding to the announcements. But in the meantime, we can talk now to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Now, this is big news. A deal's been done.
That's right. This really mattered. And it really mattered because Wes Streeting set himself the target of sorting this out within hours of becoming Health Secretary. He didn't even wait to the weekend on election week before we knew that he was going into negotiations with the junior doctors. Now, the 22% pay deal over 2 years, which comprises all sorts of bits of back pay, uplift in year, last year, it's quite complicated, but does amount to a reasonable, markable sum that the junior doctors have decided to go for. But nevertheless, it wasn't guaranteed that the Royal Colleges were going to vote this through. In the end, they have. They've done it by a decisive 2-to-1 margin, and there will be a huge amount of relief that on the eve of Labour conference, we're not going to go into another round of junior doctor strikes. I think it tells us a couple of things. I know that at the heart of Downing Street, they are very nervous that there could be any more strikes. They've thrown a lot of money at unions since they've come into power. And there is a view that if things hadn't gone their way in this vote or any other, they didn't really have a great deal of resource with which to do that. And I think that is significant. The other thing that's significant is if you read the fine print of what the BMA is saying today, they were also pressing for a bit more to compensate for past losses in pay. They haven't given up on that, but they didn't get what they want. There is a general commitment to look again at all of this, but there could be a moment in the years to come where they could come back on that too. So it's not completely over, but I think a big win and lots of relief in government tonight.
It certainly will be. Sam, thank you very much indeed. Sam Coates there, our Deputy Political Editor. Now, from the happy-go-lucky vibes of the Lib Dem conference by the seaside to the appalling threat of political violence in the US, the suspect in what the FBI are describing as an apparent assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump has appeared in court today. The 58-year-old Ryan Ruth has been charged with federal gun crimes. An investigation is underway. He could yet face more charges. Well, he was arrested after Secret Service agents spotted the barrel of a rifle poking out of the bushes on Donald Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach. He was around 300, 500 yards away from Trump when authorities fired at him and then he fled. In the last hour, President Biden praised the Secret Service and said there's no place for political violence in America. None, zero, never. He added, in America, we resolve our differences peacefully at the ballot box, not at the end of a gun. Well, our US correspondent, Mark Stone, joins us live now from Palm Beach in Florida. Mark, this is a really shocking twist.
Hi, Sophie. Yeah, what a time to be reporting on America. Absolutely extraordinary. The events of the past 24 hours. It was a little over 24 hours ago that shots were fired on the golf course in Palm Beach. Donald Trump on the 5th or the 6th hole, his security detail just ahead of him in a security bubble. It was they, as you say, who spotted the rifle poking through the fence. The gunman himself was outside the perimeter of the golf course. He got away in a vehicle, and you saw that body cam footage. They got him very quickly, and he has now appeared in court. Let me set the scene for you where we are now. We're at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's resort. You can see it behind the palm trees over there. That is where he has been through the course of the day. And as always down here, there are supporters of his. This vehicle just turned up now. Flags on it as well. I noticed the second flag down has got the image of two pistols on it, and it says lock and load. That is the visual rhetoric, I suppose, that surrounds an extraordinary time for America. They would say that is simply symbolic, but the problem is that symbolism has now become very, very real. the rhetoric has become very real indeed, with the second assassination attempt against Donald Trump in just a matter of a couple of months. The election itself is only 50 days away now, and the rhetoric is going up and up. I mean, you heard President Biden there with, I thought, a pretty measured tone. He was giving a speech in Philadelphia today, pretty measured. But Donald Trump is fighting what he sees as rhetoric, dangerous rhetoric from the left, with more rhetoric. He has been on social media today and has said the rhetoric lies as exemplified by the false statements made by Comrade Kamala Harris during the rigged ABC debate, and all the vicious lawsuits are designed to inflict damage on me, the political opponent. And he goes on to say, because of this communist left rhetoric, the bullets are flying and it will only get worse. That a statement from Donald Trump at a time when I think the risk of something further happening is really, really high across America. This country is in shock, gobsmacked by what happened yesterday, and I think a proportion of the country is riled as well.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. Mark Stone there speaking from Palm Beach in Florida. Well, let's get the thoughts again from duo Christine and Polly. I mean, it's actually quite frightening, isn't it? It's quite frightening. Whatever your view on Trump, this is frightening.
This is frightening. Fortunately, he's OK. Fortunately, they foiled it again. It's astonishing that, a police officer spotted the barrel of a gun in a bush. That's just... But it's frightening that it's escalating and we're seeing violence again. And this is not what we expect in an American presidential election. And then to hear these comments that Trump has made tonight seems to ramp it up even further. And it is a very dangerous situation, and I think we need calm heads. I think Kamala Harris was right. I think her comments were very good about, thank goodness he's OK. There's no place for violence. We need to move on from this.
Polly.
Just completely endorse what Christine has said. There's just no place for political violence. I don't like Trump at all, but he has every right to run for president, and it's good that the Americans do take security around presidential candidates very, very seriously, and that this police officer was paying so much attention. Gun culture in the US never ceases to amaze me, but the reality is that is what the country is like, and so therefore the heightened security is probably the only way that country can get through this election, and we can only hope that it will be peaceful. Because I would like to see Trump defeated fairly in a political process.
I mean, look, there's obviously issues on gun culture in the US that is quite particular to the US, but we have also seen violence, threats to our MPs in the UK as well. And I'll be honest, I find it deeply shocking every time I speak to an MP about the kind of security concerns that they need to make just going about their daily lives and doing their job.
Yeah, we've lost 2 MPs in the last 8 years, and the whole attitude is very different from when I first got involved in politics. Security was not an afterthought or anything like that, but it was for those at the very forefront in politics. Now we all have it. We all have to think about our offices, where they are, who's in the offices, minimum staffing levels of at least 2 people. And security are also now advising that we have people in when we're having surgeries. So it's beginning to interfere with what we do. And I don't like the idea of my accessibility being reduced.
It's very difficult.
I really don't like that. But at the same time, I understand that security is a concern. And I have to think about it for my staff. Because MP staff, I think, are much more at the forefront of what is happening on a day-to-day basis than we ourselves are. And I know that there was some years ago we lost a Lib Dem member of staff in a violent incident. So I think it's something we are all very aware of.
Absolutely. And thanks both very much indeed.
That's okay.
Well, the FBI will be giving a briefing on the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. That's live at 9 p.m, so we'll bring you that live on Sky News when that happens. Still to come on the Politics Hub this evening. The Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni reveals she's partial to an Aperol Spritz to get her through a summit. We are looking at what gets you through a Lib Dem conference. We're talking political riders next.
Coming up on the UK tonight at 8, Hugh Edwards avoids prison after admitting to accessing indecent images of children, one as young as 7 years old. We'll be joined tonight by a criminal barrister. Plus, Plus, the government reaches a pay deal with junior doctors in England. We'll speak to one of the chairs of the BMA's Junior Doctors Committee. And fly tipping or recycling. We'll hear from the woman who has just been fined £500 for leaving a piece of furniture outside her house for passers-by to take. All that, much more on the UK Tonight from 8.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised.
If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem. Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks, but taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We've been crushed.
Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Hello, welcome back to the Politics Hub. Well, we're here at the Lib Dem conference in sunny Brighton. The sun's shining, the mood's pretty upbeat. But of course, party conferences, like a lot of political events, can mean long days and longer nights. So sometimes you just need a bit of a pick-me-up. Well, Ed Davey could take a leaf out of Giorgia Meloni's book, the Italian Prime Minister who apparently drank Aperol spritzers and smoked skinny cigarettes in meetings with Rishi Sunak when he was Prime Minister, or when in Rome. Now, for what it's worth, the Politics Hub writer is Haribo. I'm particularly partial to Tangfastics, I have to say. Dark Coke, I think that's a kind of all-team approach, and chicken and mushroom pot noodles. That, I have to say, is our wonderful producer, Sarah Weaver. Loves a bit of a pot noodle. But what about Ed Davey? Well, I have to say, he is not quite as rock and roll as we are on the Politics Hub. Here is what the Lib Dem leader told Sam Coates gets him through those long days.
Boring coffee.
Coffee.
Keep me awake. I've just had a coffee there. Yeah, maybe actually.
Coffee and
Carrots and hummus?
Carrots and hummus, yeah.
Carrots and hummus, yeah.
Carrots and hummus. Obviously, yeah, when I was saying Tangfastics, I meant carrots and hummus. That's definitely what I go to on these long days. Let's bring in Kristen and Polly, shall we? Any confessions you want to share with the group, or...?
Chocolate.
It's a good one.
Chocolate-coated gingers and Diet Coke.
Yeah, Diet Coke is a killer, isn't it?
It just has to.
I just got the way to get through conference season, and I've, like a journalist, because I was running a think tank, did all three in a row, several years, is you've either got to really drink, or or not at all?
This is not health advice, I should just say. Obviously, Politics Hub is not endorsing this approach.
So you drink and then you have no sleep, and then I think a double espresso caramel macchiato is enough caffeine and sugar. And that's what I did in my 20s. But now that I'm in my 40s, the answer is not to drink at all, to finish and go to bed and then go for a run in the morning and be just nauseatingly sanctimonious about it.
Oh, yeah.
I remember one journalist once, I think, I don't think I'll be breaking any confidences, to say that they once brought an awful lot of alcoholic beverages after a very, very long night that came up on the receipt as breakfast beverages. So I think they were pretty pleased. It was much easier to explain to everyone involved. Yeah, it's tough though, isn't it? Because what do you do? Do you go full sugar or do you go healthy?
I remember one year we were practising at Clegg's speech and somebody had ordered in, like, a wall of Nando's.
Yeah.
And David Laws, the then MP for Yeovil, came in and he didn't know what Nando's was.
Oh, no.
That's true. He was just baffled by this weird, delicious chicken thing.
And then Nando's is like a big thing now. I remember, like, Change UK.
Change UK, oh, yeah.
Pictures famously in Nando's.
One of my staff was going about the other day with cold pizza wrapped in tin foil that he was going to have for breakfast. And I have to say I was very jealous. I wanted some.
The crucial thing is the conference stands, you see. There's lots of exhibitors here and then sort of lure people in. They often have jelly babies or little celebrations. I think that it's the tiny Snickerses have the perfect peanut to chocolate ratio. So I always go digging around in the bowl.
So I'm definitely partial to sugar. But then Tamara, who is also on my team, she always buys me kind of healthy coconut water just to make sure that I'm not completely losing the plot. When it's good. It's
no,
good.
That wouldn't get me through at all. I'm sorry.
Very good hydrator. There you go. Okay. There you go. Any other stories from politicians that you care to share? Anyone with any particular habits or?
Oh, I don't.
Or you're too.
I think we need to.
We did again when I was working for Nick Clegg. We had to keep a list of all of the food that he'd ever said that he liked, because you know that the journalists are going to come for you if he's said his favourite biscuit is the Jammy Dodger, and then another time it's the chocolate hobnob. People aren't going to say, well, he's a grown-up. They don't have favourites. So we kept this really studious list, and then his favourite snack was something his wife made. Croquetas.
Very nice. Oh, croquetas, that's a good one.
She's quite a good cook.
Thanks both very much indeed. That is it from us for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow at 7.